Hi everyone, my name is Apuraj Garikapati. Welcome to my YouTube channel Amazing Abhai.
Don't just hear the story, enter it.
He opened his eyes wide when the person beside him called his name, Elric Mervinger. The voice steady, but the information horrifying. He was suffering from a disease called magical obstruction. Unlike ordinary illnesses, his body was afflicted by a rare condition in which mana could not flow freely, and mana is the essential energy source for mages. Elric sat silently in a room of the Royal Magical Hospital, listening as the doctor rambled on. Despite all our attempts on your body, I'm afraid we are at a loss. He hung his head waiting for the verdict on his future. Unfortunately, he couldn't use magic. Just as he returned to Eden Academy, he heard Hazer complaining, "Elric, are you listening to me?" "Hello." He hurriedly blurted out, "Sorry sister." "What did you just say?" She continued to express her worry. "How's your body? What did the doctors say? Did they find a cure?" "If you need more money, I can only." Elric awkwardly cut in, "Sister, calm down, I'm not a child anymore. You don't need to worry so much, I'll recover soon." Hazer immediately retorted, "How could I not worry about my only remaining relative?" He had no choice and tried to distract her. "Ah, someone's calling me, I'll call you back." The prolonged beep let him breathe a sigh of relief. Elric gritted his teeth and muttered with a heavy heart that he couldn't tell her the truth, that he might never be able to return home. Noise rose from outside the academy doors. What's wrong with your grades? Damn those cursed windmages. I never missed class and still got a D. They looked at the all-a grade sheet and kept getting more outrageous. How could Mervinger be so different? I knew it would be like this. How does he get such high grades in those subjects? The commotion lingered in the hall. Look at your scores, they seemed just like Mervinger's to me. Shut up or I'll shut your mouth for you now. Elric's brows nearly met as he voiced his suppressed annoyance. Tusk failed again. Indeed, with a full sheet of FS, it would be an insult to his classmates if he didn't fail. This was the fourth time. According to Academy rules, 4 failures me. Elric silently analyzed his fate in his head. Expulsion. If expelled like this, I won't be able to bring honor to my family. He had tried his best to study to stay here. He had done everything he could and learned all he could. As a result, he mastered all the knowledge the academy required, and of course, Elric topped every theoretical exam. Above all, he wasn't arrogant, but he believed he was exceptional compared to others. Not just an intellect, but his ability to detect and understand mana was also deeper than others. For a mage, going from knowing theory to understanding mana is a wonderful thing they all desire. Yet every class taught how to control it. Absorb the mana currents around you from the air and gather them into your heart. That is what we call a magic circle. Even if Elric had the ability everyone wanted, so what? Whenever he attended class, he was surrounded by gears. Why is that senior stuck in a freshman class? Ha ha ha, unbelievable, a mage can't form a magic circle. Even his professor stepped in to counsel him. Why don't you give up magic and become a scholar? I'll speak well of you to the headmaster. Elric silently cursed inwardly. This damned magical blockage means I can't use magic. At best, I can only be a magic scholar, and I can't bring honor to the Mervinger family as a mere professor. He unconsciously looked up at the clear sky. Elric stood before the giant statue and whimpered. Oh sir, he was the hero of the Demon War. He himself possessed superior stellar major abilities. None other than the legend, Austin Mervinger. He had beautiful green eyes and extraordinary skill. The Empire's top magic academy was Eden Academy. Elric's mood sank to the bottom. If I'm expelled from here, it means I've destroyed the pride of the Mervinger family with my own hands. The whispering still lingered in his ear. Just thinking that guy was the first headmaster's grandson. He pressed his lips together as they mocked him. Truly the disgrace of the Mervinger family. Everyone laughed loudly at that notion, treating it as gospel. Someone even maliciously speculated, when do you think a magical royal line will die out? They finished and tried to flee, but Elric wouldn't allow it and called out to them, Hey you lots. First-year elemental magic students, right? They instinctively answered and turned around. He stepped forward to the confusion of the 2 underclassmen. Do you know an assistant professor named Sean? He's very friendly. Elric fixed his gaze on the nameplate on the other's chest. Let's see. He curled the corner of his mouth and asked a simple, cruel question. What are your names? Elric jumped down in front of them and taunted. Let me see. I don't think you can stand that damn Sean teasing you anymore, can you? They were bold when gossiping, but scattered like rats when confronted. Truly despicable. Elric sighed weirdly, then he glanced to the side. The statue of Austin still stood tall. He continued to scold himself inwardly. Sir, even if father were still here. No focus. This is not the place to be weak, not with this accursed body. Elric suddenly clenched his fist, resolving that he would break free from it. But when he returned to his little den, he stammered and complained. No, it can't be. Oh, Elric murmured, gripping the papers. The Academy's first report. He spat inwardly again. Damn it, there's nothing about magical blockage in it. Suddenly the blinding flash of light swept across his eyes. Catching Elric's attention, Sean charged like a whirlwind and pinned him to the ground. The students around them were so terrified by the violence their jaws dropped. Elric trembled, rubbing the back of his head. Without thinking, he shouted, "Who the hell told Sean to leisurely come and soothe this defective piece right here? Damn it, what did you just say?" Sean gritted his teeth and demanded angrily, "You dared to use my name again, didn't you?" Knowing he was cornered, Elric flipped his attitude faster than flipping a page. "Oh, is that my noble brother, Sean Nerster?" He refused to react and only angrily retorted, "I told you not to use my name to scare the freshmen, didn't I?" He printedly sat down, clapped his hands and said, "Is that so? I see. Since it's a special occasion, let me buy you a drink. Why don't you use a nose-repairing charm?" Sean slammed the table and protested, "I'd rather die than do that, that bastard." Did I speak too harshly? Elric narrowed his eyes and tried to manipulate his friend's feelings. "Come closer, that's why I told you never to do that." Seeing him fidgeting, he involuntarily called the other's name, Sean. After Elric's family fell, the magic tower was led by 6 royal hexagram houses. Sean was a member of the hexagram, the son of the Nerster family, and right after he graduated from the academy, he immediately became a professor and an elite member. Although he chose a path opposite to Elric's, he remained the only one who stood by him. Sean pulled out the stack of papers and asked bewilderedly, "What is this? Why are you staring at me?" Without waiting for an answer, he shoved them forward. Elric stared at the dense lines of text and felt dizzy. "What is this?" Reading the title carefully made him suspicious. Diamond Dragon and Exploration Plan. Elric skimmed it and sucked in a breath. "Why are you giving this to me?" Sean patiently explained his intention. "Although this is an ancient species still being studied, we've recently discovered one of their nests. I want you to join this expedition." He snatched up the papers and shouted, "What?" Elric's mind tangled instantly. An ancient dragon species that should have been extinct, and they found a dragon lair said to be the source of magic. Sean smiled with complete satisfaction. "If you find an artifact, do you think the Academy will overlook expulsion? Look at the map, and it's because of your sincerity." Elric devoured the route on the map. His thoughts rode a roller coaster like stock charts. "Amazing, it's not just about expulsion. Maybe the dragon lair could cure my magical blockage. It's pointless. Even if such a thing exists, the headmaster will just take it." "Wait," he exclaimed loudly and slapped the draft onto the table. Sean recalled against the chair, timidly asking, "What's with the sudden bang?" Elric said nothing, but his mind churned. "Why didn't I think of this? This is the chance heaven gave me." He moved his lips and let out a clear, almost melodious laugh. Then Elric seemed to go mad, clutching his face and laughing maniacally. Sean swore outright at this idiot. What the hell is wrong with him? He ignored the insults and pointed at the circled spot on the map. "Sean," Elric adopted a confident air and then dropped the bombshell. "There's no nest here." He stood up, pointed to a location on the map and said, "The dragon lair won't be here." Sean was stunned. "What?" He quickly scanned around, his face showing alertness. The person sitting at the table behind Elric was still engrossed in a book. Sean glanced back. The two at the next table were chatting happily. No one was paying attention over here. Sean pressed his lips together. Cold sweat poured down like a stream. "Before we move ahead, please take a second to like on this video. A like tells me that you enjoyed this topic. Your support helps Amazing Pie grow naturally." Fortunately, no one heard. Thinking that, Sean leaned close to Elric, covered his mouth and whispered, "Watch your mouth. Do you know how many professors are involved? You're challenging powerful people all at once." Elric seemed unconcerned. He shrugged casually and asked, "So?" Sean, a little annoyed, glared at him. "I'll smash your head in right now." Elric grinned, eyes curved. "Calm down, my friend. I'm the son of the Nerster family." He forced a wry smile and sighed, "Or at least hear me out." Sean frowned, grew serious, and used magic to form a small matrix on the map. The matrix suddenly emitted a blinding blue light. The next moment the blue light spread, engulfing both Elric's and Sean's seats. The matrix transported Elric and Sean to another space. From above, the spot Elric had pointed to on the map appeared before them. There was a long, seemingly bottomless fissure in the ground. Sean spoke up. The crack formed where two ley currents collided. Rays of every color spilled from the rift. Sean could see them with the naked eye and continued. A huge amount of mana was gushing from the crack. Sean watched them for a moment, then added, "With this much it must have been accumulating for at least 100,000 years. No wonder he suspected a dragon lair here." Elric stood on the edge of the fissure looking down, then asked the Sean beside him, "What are the three principles of mana flow?" Sean folded his arms and glared at Elric. "Are you kidding me?" Elric nudged him with his elbow and laughed. "Of course you know the basics, right, assistant professor?" Sean's face bulged with veins and irritation, but he still patiently answered, "From high to low." Looking at the bottomless chasm before them, Sean continued from wide to narrow. The scene suddenly shifted. Elric found himself standing inside an ice-filled cavern. Sean glanced at him, his face showing annoyance. From hot, a chill from the cavern spread everywhere. Sean's figure gradually blurred as his voice echoed in Elric's ear, finishing the remaining words to cold. The next moment Elric and Sean appeared in a vast void. Elric said confidently, "With those principles anyone would be certain the dragon lair is at this location." But Elric pointed in one direction where a streak of golden light appeared. "Because molten lava very hot flows through that rift, mana doesn't accumulate there, so dragons cannot live there." Sean frowned, disbelief written across his face. "No, that's impossible." Where Elric had pointed the lava was bubbling and surging. From the mountain's summit streams of molten lava erupted. That was Mount Akron. At the mountain's base, the molten flows pooled and wound down toward the lowlands. Elric looked down from above. "That's right, the Akron volcano's lava runs beneath the continental shell." In an instant, the matrix dissolved and Elric and Sean reappeared where they had started. Sean looked at Elric and asserted, "We recorded a dragon's mono signature in this area. How can the lair not be there?" Elric propped his chin and said nonchalantly, "I never said there's no lair." Hearing that, Sean grew even more puzzled. "What?" Elric curled his lips in a smile. "There's definitely the lair." And with that, he pointed to a spot on the map and said, "Here inside Caragol Cave." And as Elric had guessed, there really was a cave where he pointed. Closer inspection revealed a golden dragon carved above the cave entrance. Elric imagined a place filled with countless priceless shelves of magical tomes, and vast treasures of piled gold, coins, and precious gems. He was certain it was all there. After that conversation, Sean went to a door, ruffled his hair in confusion, and swore, "How do I report this to my superiors?" Sean tried to compose himself. He raised a hand to knock, then froze. Sean worried and broke into a cold sweat, thinking to himself, "Should I play dumb? If I anger the headmaster, I'll be expelled. But what if Elric's right? Then that fellow." Sean paced the corridor, undecided, unwilling to knock on the door. Suddenly, he heard a noise and turned toward the sound. Not far away, Elric was intensely practicing magic. Sean, surprised at the sight, said, "Elric, why are you alone in the training room?" Elric trembled all over, thrusting his hand forward as if trying to cast a spell. He seemed not to hear Sean muttering non-stop, "I must master healing and dispelling to become number one and honor my family at any cost." After a while, Elric was drenched in sweat. His face darkened and veins bulged. "Damn it, magical blockage." Sean, standing not far away, suddenly curled his lip into a smile and thought to himself, "That bastard, he can cure a magical blockage." He slapped his cheeks to wake himself up and said, "If that's a friend of his, I have to help him." In a room piled with books, someone suddenly spoke up. "HMPH." The person held the newspaper attentively, still muttering under his breath. "You mean?" He set the paper down, revealing a face full of displeasure, then angrily asked the person before him, "Is my research report wrong?" The speaker was the headmaster of Austin Academy, Barracks. Sean faced him, sweating profusely and stammering, "No, that's not it, but I wanted your opinion, because it might." Barracks suddenly cut Sean off. "Sean, I don't know why you reached that conclusion, if you can't persuade me." As he spoke, he swung his leg. The next moment Sean was suddenly enveloped in a terrifying crimson mana. Barracks emphasized, "Even if you were the son of the Nuraster family." His eyes flashed a cold light, his face dark as he warned Sean, "I will not let this go." Sensing the overwhelming mana surrounding him, Sean broke out in a cold sweat, thinking, the Mona is too strong. This is the power of a 7th rank mage. Then the Mona around Sean suddenly cracked and shattered. Eric suddenly flung the door wide and smiled confidently. As he looked inside, the remaining Mona in the room dissipated. Sean turned to the newcomer and exclaimed in surprise, Elric. Seeing him, he couldn't contain his excitement, and shouted, Are you crazy? What are you doing here? Elric bowed politely. Hello, headmaster. Pardon me for bursting in like this. He stood to the side, sweating cold in his place. Barrack stared at Elric and chuckled. Oh, ho, look at him. Recognizing him, he spoke up. Elric Mervinger. H-Wom. Is the assistant professor basing his reasoning on your input? Elric casually admitted it. Yes, that's right. Barracks glanced at his wristwatch and smirked. I commend your insight and clear perception. It's hard to believe a student could think of that, but there's no evidence. It's just speculation. Yes. Elric narrowed his eyes in feigned surprise. What? This is so basic even a 3-year-old would know it. You still need evidence. Barrack's expression darkened as he stared at Elric. Elric met his gaze without a hint of fear. Sean stood there trembling, tears streaming, forcing a smile while thinking, Is this guy insane? Why are you provoking him? Damn it. What are you doing here to help me? You're more like here to get someone killed for you. Barrack suddenly clutched his head and bowed over the desk. The basics, he muttered. When he raised his head, he couldn't help but laugh loudly. I'm at a loss for words. I can only laugh, a weakling who can't even condense mana. Elric, hearing that, calmly asked, Do you mean my hypothesis is wrong? Barrack straightened and looked at him. For well, some do get lucky, I suppose. He kept ranting, calling them a bunch of trash who flapped their mouths without knowing their place. Elric smirked faintly. Barracks emphasized like you, for instance. Elric said nothing. The light from outside cast a long shadow across his back, making him look a little lonely. Barracks raised an eyebrow and tapped his temple. Home as a professor, I can't simply ignore a student's opinion. He suddenly glanced at Elric's neck and changed his tone. Oh, that's right. Barracks smiled darkly and proposed. Why not make a bet with me? Barracks seemed interested. He asked, A bet what kind? Barracks replied, I will arrange everything you need to form an expedition team and notify the finance department of what you'll require. It sounds enticing, but of course everything has a price. Barracks stressed that if you fail, thinking of the thing worn on Elric's neck, the Mervinger family heirloom will become mine. That priceless treasure is the trump card that could let Elric turn the tables. He smiled confidently, the headmaster's final words echoing in his mind. The Mervinger heirloom will be mine. A magic carriage rolled through the crowded street, cries and shouts spilling from inside. Aren't you frustrated? Inside the carriage, while Sean trembled with anger, Elric calmly held a book and read intently. You're tearing my ears out, be gentler, he said, smiling with upturned eyes. It's fine. They said they won't interfere if I find the dragon's lair anyway. As soon as he finished, Sean suddenly snatched the book from Eric's hand. Before we move ahead, please take a second to share on this video. Sharing helps this video reach friends who may also enjoy anime, gaming, travel, cricket, chess, career basics, or personal stories. Your support helps Amazing Up High grow naturally. Elric looked bewildered and tried to grab it back. Hey, this is the good part, don't snatch my book. Sean's face turned as black as a pan and he growled angrily. What if you fail? He shouted excitedly, if your prediction is wrong, the family heirloom will be taken away. You idiot. That pendant. Elric bowed his head to look at the pendant hanging on his chest. The pendant flashed with a silver light. He heard Sean shout in his ear, only to be bestowed upon the head of the Mervinger family. Elric seemed unfazed. He waved his hand and laughed. That guy always wanted this pendant. Sean put his hands on his hips and pointed at him, scolding fiercely. You can still smile, don't you understand the situation? Elric suddenly cut him off. Thanks by the way. He grinned with upturned eyes. At least you've always been by my side. Sean held his face in frustration. Ha, you know my life will be ruined if we don't find that layer, right? So what's the plan? Elric finally sat up straight and said with a smile, My friend, do you really think Elric Mervinger would accept such a hardship just because of a threat? Sean blinked, still not understanding what he meant. What? Elric suddenly bared his teeth in a sly grin. If he dares to covet the Mervinger heirloom, he'll at least have to risk his life for it. Sean frowned and stared into Elric's eyes. Sweat suddenly beaded on his face. I almost forgot this guy has 2 nicknames. Thinking of Elric's tearful, pitiful face, Sean mentally added one, the shame of the Mervinger family. The other was the terrifying, insane visage of Elric, the most fearsome of the Mervinger clan. Sean fell silent as he watched Elric sitting before him. For a moment neither of them spoke. Elric sat opposite Sean with a crazed expression. Sean bit his lip, breaking out in a cold sweat. He was at it again. When Sean was still an apprentice, he didn't even want to recall this incident. Back then he was sweating profusely, frowning and yelling. Standing opposite him was a young teenager who clenched his teeth and roared all the more fiercely. 7 years earlier, everyone queued in the monocondensation training hall and debated heatedly about the size of their Mona. One of them refused to accept it and said, "Mine is bigger." Elric was only 15 then, curled up in a corner behind them with his head bowed low. Just then someone suddenly mentioned him. "Are you sure you're really a Mervinger?" He heard it and looked up at them. A group of students appeared before Elric. Riverin condensed his Mona and looked down at him. "Even the famed Lord Mervinger can't do this, huh?" He sneered with contempt and mocked. "Maybe your head of house picked you up from some corner." The students behind him burst into laughter. They laughed in chorus. "Stop it, ridiculous." Elric lowered his head, lips moving as if to say something. But he chose silence and wondered to himself, "Am I not unlucky?" After Riverin and his group turned to leave, Elric slowly stood up. He suddenly reached out and took something round before him. He already had his answer inside, of course. The next instant, Elric unexpectedly swung the orb and struck Riverin at the name. The 2 students accompanying him, startled by the sound, whipped their heads around. Elric kept his lips pressed and glowered without saying a word. He thought to himself, "But it's unlucky for those fools." The orb in Elric's hand was still smeared with blood. Riverin now lay collapsed on the ground. The 2 students with him panicked, calling Riverin wake up. At Ednekami during the disciplinary hearing, Elric faced the crowd waiting to judge him and calmly spoke. "That brat from a vicar family dared to slander me, the head of the ducal house." He looked at them and said, "Therefore I punished him according to the Empire's laws. Any problem with that?" Those at the disciplinary hearing huddled together and whispered. Sean folded his arms eagerly, anticipating the outcome. Riverin's parents were stunned and astonished. Elric's gaze was utterly resolute. He didn't feel he had done anything wrong. Yet in the end, Elric was suspended under Academy law. All students are equal before the rules. Elric turned and left the disciplinary hearing. He gave a cold, merciless smile, and after that day no one dared touch him again. Back in the present, Sean cupped his face in deep frustration. He suddenly glanced down. The next second Sean jumped up and shouted, "Hey, are you crazy?" Elric waved it off as if nothing happened. "I told you not to shout anymore. Watch your blood pressure." The hand holding Sean's book trembled uncontrollably as he yelled, "That's a forbidden book. Are you out of things to read?" Elric rubbed his head and grinned innocently. "Exactly. If I'm discovered, I'll be skewered on a spit." Sean returned the book to him, frowning in annoyance. "You're really crazy." Elric cheerfully took the book. Sean then looked at him seriously and asked, "What do you intend to use the Beast King body enhancement technique for?" Elric was a bit absent-minded for a moment and replied, "I'm just wondering if this can cure my magical blockage." Elric thought of the battle with the Beast King. When the Beast people invaded the Empire with their legions, we struggled because that technique enhanced their physical power. When the war ended, the technique vanished, because the Empire drove out all the Beast people. They even built walls to keep them out, preventing them from crossing the barriers. Sean frowned and said, "Scholars failed to recreate that technique." Elric sat opposite him, flipping the book nonchalantly. "I've reconstructed it, but I'm not sure how it will alter the body." Hearing this, Sean couldn't help exclaiming, "And shock, you recreated it." He looked pale with astonishment. "I'm so shocked I might burst my heart." "So Elric, do as you please." Just then, the carriage they were riding and suddenly shook violently. Elric rubbed his sore head angrily and stuck his head out. "What's going on? Why is the carriage stopped?" Sean, curious, followed him out. At that moment, a group of people suddenly approached, greeting Elric, "Long time no see." Elric glanced at them. "I didn't expect to run into you lot." Seeing Riverin's group come up to him, Elric couldn't help but ask, "What are you doing here?" Riverin smirked. "Why? Because I care a lot about my classmates." He is now a senior researcher at the Varix Research Institute. Sean couldn't contain his anger and lunged forward. "You bastard." Riverin's men froze and recoiled. "What's the matter?" One of them hurriedly explained. The director requested we come assist. Elric stared at them. Is that so? The people before him smiled as if nothing were wrong, though their intentions were malicious. Elric growled, "You're too kind. I told you I didn't need assistance." Sean leaned in and whispered to Elric, "You feel that right? How many are hiding mana?" Elric replied softly, "Now that's a true director of Varix." He suddenly loosened his collar so Sean could see inside and said, "Don't worry, I've prepared for this." Sean asked in surprise, "How did you get that?" Elric smirked, but said nothing. In Varix's office, his face darkened and he trembled with anger, shouting, "What?" He obtained the Breath of Gehenna and the Celestial Thunder King armor. The man before him broke into a sweat. "You told us to assist him as best we could, sir." Varix shouted furiously, "You bastard. The things Elric possesses: the Breath of Gehenna, the sealed flame orb that can burn a target to ashes, and the Celestial Thunder King armor. Armor that resists both physical attacks and elemental magic. Just thinking of those two treasures gives me a headache. You think lending a 4th-tier magic weapon to a student that can turn a town to dust is acceptable, and it's him of all people." Varix massaged his bald head to ease the ache and muttered, "I'm going crazy. Get out, I don't want to see your face anymore." The man before him fell silent and Varix, and saying nothing further. The next instant he shouted, "Yes, sir," and bolted away like the wind. Varix glanced at the report on his desk and muttered that if the other candidates learned of this, it would cause big trouble. Suddenly, as if thinking of something, his eyes brightened. "Wait," he said, grabbing the stack of papers beside him. "If that kid truly finds the dragon's lair." Varix immediately calmed himself. "Not bad. I suspect that bloodline is more than just rumor." After saying that, he slammed the paper onto the desk. "I should replace this incompetent research team. They call themselves scholars yet don't even know the basics." Then Varix realized he'd spoken out of turn and froze. The next moment he quickly backtracked. "No, no." Varix curled his lips into a smile, revealing his bright red tongue. "Thanks to those fools, I'll have a chance to seize that pendant." Varix's expression turned extremely sinister. Once he had it, he'd be sure to become the next prime minister. With that, he immediately crushed the paper in his hand. A terrifying layer of mana suddenly enveloped him. "Even if you win the bet," he murmured, "it only counts if you can return alive." Elric kept flipping through the book, strange incantations whispering in his ear. River's group folded their arms across their chests and stared intently ahead. John closed his eyes tightly and focused on reciting the incantation. He became enveloped in a matrix that emitted a blazing golden light. The orb in his hand shone dazzlingly as he shouted, "Locate mana!" Immediately the golden light spread wider, and everyone watched him intently. Suddenly someone trembled and cried out, "Look, not far away, a pillar of blazing golden light is shooting up into the sky." John looked that way in astonishment and murmured, "Elric was right." River and widened his eyes, unable to believe it. Is it really here?" Elric closed the book and calmly said, "I knew it." The next moment he turned to everyone and shouted, "Our whole team must move quickly before the pillar of light burns out. Before we move ahead, please take a second to like on this video. A like tells me that you enjoyed this topic. Your support helps Amazing Apai grow naturally." As soon as he finished, John immediately wrapped an arm around his waist, and without hesitation, he pulled Elric and suddenly surged toward the pillar of light, holding on tight. In a flash, the two of them were far ahead of River and's group. River and's people watched their figures in amazement, mouths agape. River and couldn't help shouting, "Hey, what about us?" Time passed in a blur before River and's group finally managed to reach the mountain. River and bent over, gasping as if he might collapse, muttering, "Please wait for us, we're exhausted." When they looked up, surprise appeared on their faces. What the? They saw the golden pillar before them fatting. The group panicked and stammered, "There's nothing here." They began to argue, "There's nothing here. Not even a cave. Didn't you say that entrance would be here? I knew this Mervinger always brings bad outcomes." River and rubbed his chin. "It's fine now." He sneered quietly, "I could step forward and pry open your skull to see what's inside, right? Someone should pay for this mistake." At that moment, Elric suddenly shouted, startling River and Sean. "Look," Elric called out, "can you make a big hole here?" Sean smiled confidently, "Leave it to me." He gathered Mona around his arms. Then Sean immediately began chanting and unleashed Mona that expanded outward. The Mona around him erupted. He murmured as his eyes flared brightly. Boom! A great explosion sounded as the ground beneath the pillar was shattered by Sean, sending dirt and rocks flying. As the earth broke, Sean's magic suddenly emitted a golden light. The ground collapsed with a roar and the light spread ever wider. The next instant that golden light, like a volcanic eruption, pierced through the soil and plunged downward. Looking at the large hole just created, Elric said nonchalantly, "Found it." The trailing group stood dumbfounded. "What? How is this possible?" Another person suddenly spoke up. "In the worst case there could be a dragon." Before he could finish, he let out a loud gasp. A beam of blue light suddenly enveloped the whole area. River and followers cried out in shock. "What the?" They gritted their teeth and tried to withstand the pressure of the enormous Manhwa flow. Some turned pale and stared ahead in stunned fear. Then Elric suddenly spread his arms wide as a signal to them. He looked straight ahead and said, "Don't move, that's just compressed Manhwa escaping from when I made the hole." Elric put on a serious face and said, "Everyone get inside." At the mouth of the deep hole, the group saw Elric descend into the cavern and panicked, shouting, "Elric, wait for us." Everyone followed Elric. Inside the cavern, the stalactites seemed to glow. River and among the group rubbed his hands and said, "Huh, why is it so cold here? Even after using spells, it still doesn't feel any warmer." While walking, Elric suddenly froze. Sean beside him asked confusedly, "What's wrong? Do you see something?" A huge question mark formed in Riverend's mind. Not only did I feel a chill down my spine, Sean blew on his freezing hands and said, "Maybe you're cold too. I think I'm getting sick." No one noticed the pendant on Elric's neck suddenly emit a silver light. After a moment, the team sent to assist suddenly moved forward eagerly. Elric and Sean followed slowly. Elric murmured, "Perhaps you were right." Inside the cave appeared a monster with blazing red eyes. Its arms were pinned straight to the wall. In the black night, its red eyes shone all the more clearly. It grinned to reveal pearly white teeth and in a gloomy tone said, "So you're here." Finally, one of the men trailing behind Elric gaped at the scene. Wow, Sean was equally surprised and impressed. Before them stood a huge door with a golden dragon carved on it. The followers stared in astonishment, stammering, "Is this a door?" A middle-aged man in the group shouted, "The strong should gather quickly." River seemed eager to try. Everyone pushed it together. A young man with long hair suddenly conjured a red flame in his palm and suggested, "Why not break it with magic?" The man beside him replied, "What did you say?" Of course, just as they were about to act, someone suddenly shouted, "Stop." Everyone puzzled turned to look at the speaker. Elric sighed and pointed to a corner. "Can't you see the dragon seal on this door, you idiots?" He stared at the door where a dragon-shaped press and carvings were set, and the strange runes. "I have no idea what would happen if I tamper with it." River and a little annoyed ground his teeth and said, "Sure, you're always so clever, I get it. You always have to show off." Scowling at Elric as he negotiated with the others on the other side, "So when we try to open it, stay clear of the door and..." At that moment River suddenly noticed the button beside the door. He sat down to examine it. "What's this made of?" Elric on the other side kept instructing the group, "First we need to figure out how to break the seal." He turned to Sean, "Do you have any notes on it?" Elric looked around, "Make sure no one acts on their own from now on. I don't know what could happen if..." Just then, River suddenly reached to touch the button on the door. "Is it gold? What is it made of?" Elric shouted urgently, "Don't touch it." River had just touched the button when he turned his head. "What the..." The next moment, a golden light suddenly burst from beneath his feet. The spot where he sat exploded, flinging him backward. He screamed, what is this?" Elric gritted his teeth and had just finished speaking. The characters on the door suddenly shifted. The people below froze. "What's happening to the door?" Elric shouted urgently, "Careful, it's a trap." No sooner had he finished than magic struck the man behind Elric, sending him flying backward. Everyone stared in amazement at the burst of magic erupting before them. Elric shouted, "Shield up!" Everyone reacted quickly and raised their shields, which saved them from those explosions. The crowd panicked and screamed, "What's happening?" Sean, sweating profusely, yelled, "Elric, what do we do now? Do something." Elric stared at the note before him and replied loudly, "I'll try to decipher this record first." The crowd began to shout, "I don't want to die, don't leave us, save us." Elric squatted on the ground to calm himself. "Stay calm." He forced his mind to focus, like a situational response test. Elric put pen to paper, "Right? Just imagine this is a situational response test." His gaze grew determined. "I'll find the solution. I trust myself like I always do." Elric's writing speed increased. One person in the crowd couldn't withstand the barrage. His shield shattered, and the attack struck him directly. He screamed. Elric tried to remain calm and continued recording the decipherment. Sean held his shield up to protect those behind him as groans of pain kept rising. My arm helped me. As Elric's writing accelerated, his hand suddenly touched the round button on the door. He began to murmur the incantation, silently urging himself to add just a little more, as long as he made no mistakes. Elric squeezed his eyes shut, he gritted his teeth and thought, "Come on please." As if answering his plea, the magic attacks finally ceased. Everyone was astonished. They stopped. Sean collapsed to the ground exhausted, staring up at the sky. "I thought I was dead." Elric hurried over to him. "Sean, are you okay?" Sean looked at him. Elric smiled faintly. "Thanks to you I'm still alive." The crowd buzzed. "Wait, the wounds will heal quickly. That attack cost me some lifespan." "River, and you're okay, right?" Sean glanced at Elric. "That bastard, he's something else." Elric rubbed his chin proudly. Hey, that's my power, you bastard." Before the group could catch their breath, the spot where they stood was suddenly enveloped by a layer of blue mana. One of them looked surprised. "Hey." The next moment something lunged toward the group. A beam of blue magical light concentrated into a spell and struck a man's arm, destroying it. The next second he collapsed before everyone's eyes. His body slowly crumpled to the ground. Panic spread. "Is he okay? What's happening?" Elric widened his eyes and shot. Ice magic spells suddenly began to form in increasing numbers. They dived down from above toward where Elric stood. He looked up and exclaimed in astonishment, "Damn it." At the critical moment, Sean suddenly used his shield to block the ice spell's attack, nearly unable to hold it entirely. The group quickly raised their shields to brace themselves. Elric hurriedly took out paper and pen, gritting his teeth. "Damn it again." Elric focused on calculations and muttered in some strange language. He wrote and read without pause. Sean, barely holding on, shouted urgingly, "If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to Amazing Apai. Subscribing makes sure you do not miss the next video, and it gives me motivation to keep improving the quality of every upload. Thank you for being here, and I will see you in the next one.